Hi.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
You guys know the drill. What are your names?
Steve.
Did everybody add Jake on Facebook? Yeah.
We need a running tally as the podcast goes on.
I was recognized for the first time in the gym today. They said, "Are you on YouTube?"
Are you the camshaw guy?
Well,
And then I
you the one with the grapefruit?
I skittered
and the
away.
bananas?
I skittered away back into my hole.
oh. It's like when Jake does that. What is that? I'm gonna do that when I go. For all of you that don't know, the Novo Nutrition, the Novo Nutrition is a sort of an umbrella company to some degree. So we have the Novo Nutrition LLC, which we sell the U-Topes, and Maximum MPS, and new stuff coming out soon, but don't tell anybody I told you that.
Teaser campaign.
Teaser. And then we also have how it started really with Ben started first with the consulting side, the Novo Consulting, and so we have also a team of consultants. We have myself, we have Jake, we have Ben, our
Pete.
affiliates are Pete,
Chad.
with us, and Chad, Dolan. Where are their I'm sorry, their letters, educations and stuff.
Pizza, PhD, CSCS.
Sounded like you said pizza.
Pizza, yes.
I did.
That's my qualification. Mine is Supreme Pizza.
Meat lovers.
Sordus is on there. He has a CSCS. And,
MLS meat lovers.
God. Am I supposed to finish this, or are we
Yes, keep going.
We're moving on to Supreme Pizzas. So yeah, Sordus, PhD, CSCS.
Do we say Chad? Who? Chad?
Chad started a PhD, but he has a master's and I believe a CSCS, and I think he's a USAPL ref. So whatever the certification that is, I think Mike has that too. You have your master's in business and then management, and then Jake's MS, CSCS. Anything else?
CISSN.
CSSN. And I think I'm last. I don't know. There's a bunch of just fucking letters.
He's the king.
Elemental
the
P.
king.
A bunch, yeah. For every letter, it's a year wasted of my life.
Year. CSCS. MS. RD.
Yeah, and then you get the LDN if you're licensed. So.
And he's got LDN. He did his test in like a day. So we're going to talk about that side of things, not necessarily our consulting only, and we're not here to like push our business only, but really anyone who's been good, all those guys we named, people like Matt Gary, Lane, who else is good, Berto, 3DMJ people, Bryce has been pretty successful, and I can't enumerate every person that's good, but there's plenty good, but what these people all have in common, essentially the commonalities, is that they all seem to have what the public perceives as the secret of a secret. And I think what we want to talk about today is really just kind of, there is no secret. There's just something everyone has. And I think what they have realized and what they've communicated to people and kind of done is the misconceptions of consulting, along with what you can expect. And I think that everyone who has seen success and who has taking people to another level, kind of how Ben won't say it, but kind of how Ben really has helped a lot of people, especially at the national stage and the world stage as well. There's certain things that are just down, that certain coaches have, and it's not anything good necessarily. It's just certain things that they have down. So Ben, this was really more up your alley, probably more than any of ours, especially. So what are some of those misconceptions and expectations and kind of just
there's a lot of ways to kind of dissect this question. I'll try to touch on each of them rather briefly, the ones that I don't really think I can speak on much, but at least things to be aware of. So when you are going out and looking, I think some people look for coaching for different purposes, and I think that that should actually dictate what you look for too. I mean, if some people are looking for emotional support, some people are looking to be it's kind of funny, but yelled at and almost like disrespected, because I've had certain clients like that, and
It's still your motherfucking set.
And what?
Thanks.
Oh yeah, exactly. And because some people respond well to that, and I think it is important to research and find out someone's personality type, because a lot of times what you are meshing with is the personality of that person as well. And if you need certain things, like phone conversations or regular Skype things and stuff like that, that's something that you're going to want to find out if that person does. That being said, I think that's why it's important for us to have a collective, a group consulting thing, because I am not the most social person, and I really care most about the data and information. So I assume that most people who are coming to me are coming pretty much strictly to make progress, not have a super feelsy heart to heart, because it's just really difficult to do that. It's difficult to do both and do both really well. But so that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is what you are seeking moving into it. So I guess that's kind of a good point to kind of segue off of, is if you are seeking out consulting for someone purely just to make progress at as fast a rate as possible, I think it's important for all of us to realize how far we're going to go is highly relevant to our starting point, to our baseline. And I really can't stress that point enough, because I think some people...
Also being honest in that point, I think.
So being honest from the coach to the potential client, and the client to themselves.
Especially, because there's a lot of people who want to impress with their initial baseline.
Yep.
Have you guys seen that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm sure you guys do this, but that's one of the reasons as well, when I always... when you get people started, kind of underestimate things a little bit, and I don't do that
that's a big thing,
I guess, just arbitrarily, but it's more of just like setting people, and I'm not doing it, I guess arbitrarily was the wrong word, but I'm not doing it to say that like somebody's lying, but like I want to set you up to succeed.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to impress me with your numbers. I want you to do well. Like
we'll get there.
Yeah.
So that brings up a really important point, which is something that I think is important to note for, and I don't want to speak for every single person who does consulting, but I do think anybody who does tend to be more objective with it, or is controlling as many variables as possible, it's important to understand that there's a grace period where we're not just going to get to know each other as people, but we're going to get to know you better as an athlete as well, and get to know your data, your trends, your everything. So anytime you're going to get really good at either handling somebody for a meet, prepping somebody for a show, getting somebody just to hit PRs in the gym, test 1 rep maxes, change body comp, you have to understand you're looking at literally a sample size of 1. And so what the approach is going to start with is the general themes that we have of physiology. For example, you can be sure that anytime someone comes to me, you can expect that there's going to be a volume increase in your training. The degree of that I cannot tell you until we get to have at least a month or so of work together, at least sometimes even a block. And the importance of that, and again, this feeds back to the beginning question, is what to expect from consulting is, if you're going and looking for the 1 month fix, and I have a feeling most of our audience probably isn't, so I won't spend too much time on that, but if you're trying to get the best deal out of coaching, like work together for 1 block and then get the quote unquote answers and then do it yourself, you haven't even scraped the surface. And it's not that you need to work together for a year with somebody to get the themes of what's going on, but one block, 1 month it's dangerously assumptive, I guess.
Yeah.
And because, again, realize that we previously talked about a little bit about education, institutionalized stuff, is most of us really have been at least studying to some degree these things for a decade. So to assume that you're going to get a decade's worth of information or more in a 1 month, or even really in a couple months, like, man, I wish we could find a way to do it, but it's just not going to happen. The other thing that I did want to touch on was, I kind of lost my train of thought, so if you guys want to jump in with anything, please do.
I think one important aspect along with what you were just saying is, obviously with misconceptions of consulting and things like that, don't expect that you're going to get a full-fledged education essentially through email.
It's not a tutor,
Yeah. That's just something that we don't, it's just not appropriate. It's not an appropriate venue for that kind of thing. There's something else I was going to say. I'm forgetting it now. Brian, you want to pick up?
Mike Dusher had this great status the other day. Mike T, who's with RTS, if you guys aren't familiar, and they put out phenomenal stuff, and they're great for powerlifting. And he had the status that said, training has an expiration date. And I know the way we program in this house here, it's weekly. So in the example that Mike gave was that if you get something for this week, and if you get sick, that has expired. Or if you miss, like, you'll get an evolution, and that has now expired. So everything that you get through a coach, with your experience, I would say you can learn a lot from working with a coach, but what they gave you was specific to you in application. You can't say, well, I learned this one way, so if you work together for 6 months, that means that's 26 experiences you had with that person, and you can't say, okay, I've learned 26 things how to respond, but that's just specifically to you and your the way you are today. Today I was lifting with somebody who has great endurance, and I said a joke. I was like, man, I think you have like double the mitochondria I have, because I just can't program at that level of I was like, and it was kind of a joke, but could be kind of good to have some validity to that. And so I think in terms of education, when looking for a coach or having a coach, know that there's two sides. One, with consulting, it's literally consulting first. So recognize it as consulting first. And any questions, and if you do want to educate yourself, tie those to the literature. Kind of that's how I learned. So what I initially learned is I got examples from working with Ben, and I said, okay, this is what he did for me, and I went and I read just a bunch of NSCA books essentially. And what I saw is that some of the things he did you couldn't read in a book. That's the fine hand of actual consulting.
And I think that ties back into the point of what Ben said, getting to know the individual and developing that relationship. I think sometimes with the whole advent of quote-unquote evidence-based training and nutrition interventions and things like that, is that people get the idea that every single change, every single thing is a calculated numerical formula that is some just like it can be programmed to infinity, and because and
it's a repeatable process.
You may see very specific questions of like, well, why is the percentage this week, this percentage volume increase versus I think despite the fact that we are using what we currently know to be, or a very good way of programming an individual to get stronger and get bigger, I think it would be silly to think that there is absolutely no intuitive thinking going into that. So to ask for a number or a specific number in some cases, it just doesn't make any sense. It's not a number. It's in my brain. Like, I'm using my own intuition.
So there's two things that I do want to touch on. One directly in response to that, one not so much, something that was brought up previously. Directly from that point, I think experimentation is a tremendous part of this. So, and kind of taking, again, building on what we talked about in the last podcast about institutionalized things, is you can read every study out there on programming. What you're getting from that study is a general kind of amalgam of something that works for the mean, which is the average of everybody in that cohort. What one-on-one consulting is doing is trying to tease out that one person and optimize the intervention for them. So there's no way you can't get away from designing a really single experiment for that person, which is a starting point, and then refining the starting point as you're going. And that's why regular follow-up is really important. And I remember I told somebody at the Arnold, we talked briefly about programming, and I think I just said the one thing that you can take away from this, his name is Joe, I think he's interning with TSA, and I said the one thing you can take away from this, or you should take away from this, is don't think there is one way to do this. There isn't the Ben way to program. There's not the Ryan way. There's not the Zordos way. There's a concept that is the starting point, but it's almost like the analogy I've used before for other things is you're starting with the foundation at the house. How you're going to build the actual frame of the house from there is going to be different based on every person, because not everybody wants the same house, the same structure. So that's a huge part, and I think it's really important to understand that going into the coaching relationship. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was something I said in the beginning, and I just want to kind of elaborate on it a little bit more, which is your starting point in reference to how well you're going to do. I don't think it is a good indicator to have inductive reasoning, so associative reasoning, with saying these people are at the top of their class, they're programmed by this individual must be the best. That's very poor. That's like saying Phil Heath's prep coach is the best prep coach out there.
He is a champ.
Yeah. And so it's a very dangerous thing to do, because you're taking elite individuals who likely weren't doing the most optimal programming, and then they got maybe somewhat of a better intervention, and then they blew up. Really, if you're looking for the best person, you should find the person who's done the most with the person who started with the least. And it's something I've always found ironic, is like, it's almost like you walk into a gym, who does everybody ask for advice? The biggest dude there. And it oftentimes could be the most dangerous way to get information. So just one final point on that before we move on is, and I don't remember what study this was done with, but it was just this simple graph, and it was kind of arbitrary, where it just showed elite athletes from starting point, like trainability of elite athletes from starting point to maximizing their potential. And it's very important to understand when you start up with somebody and you see they work with maybe a national champion or a American national champion, and then you expect that they're going to take you to that level as well. You have to be, and like we said, honest with yourself, is how well do you stack up right now without any kind of good intervention, or with your own kind of based on your own devices. If you're pretty successful already, that's a good indicator that you're going to be really competitive. If right now you're in the bottom of the pack, maybe you might be able to get to the middle, but you have to have very realistic expectations. it's not magic. Like there are no magicians in this that I'm aware of. Sure, people are going to sell you as that, but it's important for someone to be honest with you and let you know where you stand and how good you can be. And I guess just the final last thing is, man, just appreciate progress, because if you were making it on your own, why did you come to get consulting? So again, it's important to realize that regular progress is the goal here, because you can really get hurt too.
Yeah, which we see a lot, especially in powerlifting. I don't think that. I'm sorry. One point that I wanted to say a while ago, and it does kind of tie into what we've been saying about selecting a coach, is one, being realistic with yourself and knowing where you are from a starting point to a potential end point. Physiology is a lot different than psychology, and I can use this kind of as a double example for anybody in chemistry out there. When we were having a conversation the other day, and we said, and I looked at Jake, and I think he already had this thought. I was like, dude, my thinking is quantum. I was like, I am quantum. And he was like, yeah. Like, and I didn't have to explain it, but what I meant by that was, if let's take electrons. As we know that, like, okay, let's say Earth has a orbit. It's pretty static. It's pretty predictable year after year after year. But if you look at an electron, it has an orbital. You know it's going to be somewhere, but you don't know where it's going to be. You know it's going to be within an orbital field, is what they call it. Thinking is quantum. And so with coaching, with consulting, it's a thinking process. You can't take someone's thoughts and trace them linearly and say, he did this exact inductive reasoning that Ben was talking about earlier, sequence of things. Therefore, I must do same. It's not. It doesn't work like that in quantum thought. How our brains actually work.
Me of a funny thing that's very popular to do is, people find a popular program like Shiko, however you pronounce it. You say tomato, I say fuck you, and or like Smolov or anything like that, and they do it. Then they get progress out of it, then they do it again and expect to get the same level of progress. Adaptation does not work that way. And so that's another thing to realize, is if you work with somebody for a short period of time and you say, this worked really well, I don't need you anymore, I'm just going to go do it myself, and then you find that you're making less progress or not progressing at all, that's the reason, is like Ryan said, this is a very dynamic process. And a lot of things are happening throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, and adaptation is not linear. It's very non-linear, and it can be very erratic. Like, if you look at some of the graphs I have of people's progress, it's kind of hilarious, because all you can really tease out is a trend line upward, but week to week and sometimes month to month, the waves are incredible.
Yeah.
And going along with that, one of the things you had mentioned is that a lot of people coming initially are either going from whatever they were doing, which may not have been the greatest, to a more refined plan, or from something that was pretty good to something with basically more training volume. And then, they kind of blow up. They get a lot stronger, a lot bigger, what have you.
There's no secret to that.
No, there's no secret to it. But the other thing to expect, again, with adaptation is, and expectations with consulting, your change from basically, it's like noob gains. Your change from doing nothing to doing something isn't going to be representative of the rest of this relationship. Like, your first
law of diminishing returns.
Your first block or your first month with me actually, I would rarely say like first month is indicative of really anything happening, but like if maybe your first block with me like goes really well, you're probably gonna kind of start slowing down.
It's like the first 3 months of your new girlfriend.
Yeah,
everything's
like,
super good and fake
so,
and not real.
Yeah.
And she left me and she broke my heart. I'm talking to you.
So you have to keep that in mind, and there's always going to be people that I mean, I'm one of them. Ben probably would say he's one of them too. They're just impatient, and you want progress. You want it now.
Like you said in the last podcast, I had a bad test say I'll probably never powerlift again.
I literally may not. Well, I'm pretty strong. Usually my convictions. I may squat again, but I don't know. But yeah, what I was saying is that don't force the coach or consultant, whatever you want to call it. Don't force them to
make it an
push you. Because I don't want to kill you. Like,
right.
And like you just said, Ryan, it's dangerous. People can get hurt doing this. And like, I want to give you progress, believe me. But getting hurt is so much worse than just slow progress and being able to train at all. So just as Ben said, take progress for what it is, and
what you can get.
Be patient. Yeah.
So it's actually a catch-22 because you seek out someone to assist you with programming or nutrition with the expectation of returns and results. However, and often maximized returns or max plug.
We sell protein. It's called Max MPS. It's got 3.15 grams of leucine. It's only $29.
You're good at trying to get my thinking, like challenging my thinking to stay on path. So you're often seeking someone to maximize your progress, or let's say optimize, which is a dangerous word to use. But in doing that puts you in a dangerous situation, because now the person who's writing you the intervention wants to give you that progress because they want to meet your expectation. And you might have an extremely high level of expectation. So what does that dictate? That dictates a very intense intervention, because let's look at, I'm going to try to simplify this as much as possible. And I like using this adaptation reference. Is I've used the sun before, let's use a tanning bed. As you go and try to get darker skin, you have to expose yourself to more of that stressor to get more of a response. And what happens is you can dose that response in a large wave in the beginning and get a very rapid adaptive stimulus from it. However, realize that is not a long-term, it's not a feasible long-term intervention, because it will destroy you at some point. And the reason I like using that reference is everybody pretty much has had sunburn before. Sunburn is the same thing as pushing too hard and getting to an injury point, whereas it needs to be appropriately dosed. So you can put that big wave forward to give somebody adaptation, but realize the more rapid you want to make progress, the more you have to push the pedal down, and also the more you're going to ride that fine line of adaptation and injury, or adaptation and maladaptation. So I think, and again, I want to make hopefully a really clear holistic example of this, or kind of macro scale example, is look at the progress of all of the top powerlifters that you've seen who have been competing for more than a few years. Now, take their totals from nationals at over the past 5 years, and look at how much their total has changed. it's not dramatic. Same thing with high-level bodybuilders. Look at their physique from the past 5 years, the past 10 years, if they're an older competitor. There's not a dramatic change in tissue. So again, I'm just kind of reiterating the law of diminishing returns, but realize that after you make a huge wave of progress, to continue to make that huge wave of progress, the requirement is exponential. You usually have to do even more amounts of work. And that's when you get to these difficult situations of where you start with somebody. Let's take a client that you work with for a year. You start with somebody, they make great progress within that year, but then they start to say, well, this is starting to impede my life, blah, blah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly it is.
All you do is lay in the tanning bed all day.
Yeah. It's like saying, I want to learn, I want to be a theoretical physicist, but I want to only go to school and only study and write for an hour a day. Okay. Maybe you'll get a couple months.
Your volume will be stuck at that level.
Yeah. And then you're screwed. So the great thing about adaptation is it's kind of a universal concept. You can make a parallel to many different things because almost everything in life is adaptation when there is some kind of struggle to make progress.
Man, yeah, and I think that's actually brings me to, I've been getting these like kind of live revelations doing these. So Ryan's opinion, not de Novo or anyone else's opinion, what this good coach is, what this actual secret is respecting the natural progression of things. It's someone who, to tie in our last podcast, won't give you the institutional reward you're used to, because we're used to saying, okay, year 1 I should have this, quarter 2 I should have this, and we're so used to getting rewarded on a timely basis that's very structured. The smart coach, the coach that will keep you healthy and make these progressions, is the one that's going to respect physiology. It's going to respect your adaptations. It's going to know when I'm pushing you, you could get injured. Sure, we won't make progress, but we may have to maintain for the next two or three blocks or something like that. So this person with the secret is this person who just really has an affinity for the natural. So it's what Jake said in our previous podcast. He said you can take from the institution and make it your own and make it better. So when we speak about being educated and being qualified, anybody can read a book and then go totally mess someone up, but it's having the knowledge, knowing the ledge, and then having that knowledge kind of in a
flirting with it a little bit.
Yeah, kind of like, it's like you have a knowledge bucket and you're like, okay, well, you're digging in the chum of knowledge and you just give them a little bit when it's applicable. And that's what I see in a lot of younger, newer people who are smart and are bright. They're talking about high level things, and it's like that has nothing to do with it. They're just throwing these words out and throwing these big, like you always say, a little bit is dangerous.
Yeah. Well, it's more is not better. And I think that's a funny thing, because if you want to talk about, what are some themes that everybody should understand with things like programming and adaptation, it is obviously, like we've kind of hovered around saying multiple times in this, is you do need to subject yourself to more work to get more results. And I think oftentimes people will hear maybe someone like us or Dr. Zotos talk about volume and how volume is extremely important for progress, and then they'll make the assumption that, I just need to do more volume, I need to just chronically do more volume all the time.
That's the classic institutional thought.
Exactly. So you have not contextualized that thought, and that is when you're a danger to yourself and anybody else if you're working with people.
I am the volume guy.
Well, funny enough, I think that comment actually is very appropriate to let's use my situation. Is I will probably most likely never be able to compete in a full powerlifting meet again, and that is because I've tested these things on myself. Not to say that I've found these universal answers from it. However, it has helped me give context to when someone is flirting with this line of too much in a block, because I've felt that before. And I don't know, I'm not saying that it's better or worse. I was just very committed to finding answers and willing to break to do it. But I think that does give you a certain, I don't want to say leg up, but it's something you can kind of help people better with, because you can say, okay, I've been feeling those things. This red, alarms are going off now. Time to pull back. And man, it is important to listen to the person who says that. Very important, because, and again, that brings in another dimension of this, is how much do you care about the person that you're trying?
It's a consummate experience.
It's extremely, you should care about that person as much as you care about your own well-being, or as close as you can.
Yeah.
And
that's always a joke I say to my, it's not even a joke, I said, yeah, they asked me a question, and I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about you all week, because I do I think about them I think about their training during the week all the time.
Yeah, it's extremely important, because if you're disconnected and you just say more volume, you're going to get more progress, and you just want to look good on the outside, man, you are just going to go through people like you're putting them through the grinder.
Yeah, and the turnover is going to be insane.
There was something I wanted to add. I think it was about kind of initial and starting expectations, and still along the lines of like getting to know people, and just kind of alluding to social media, I guess. And I guess how you had mentioned, Ben, about people starting out and basically doing really well or blowing up over whatever period of time. And I think one of the reasons for people being kind of, or seeking out the coach or consultant that they perceive to be the most expert because of that, I think one of the reasons for that being so popular is just social media.
Yep.
And not even necessarily like, there's nothing wrong with being proud of what you've done as a person, but I think, and why I'll never do this, is the consultant posting about such and such person who, look how good of an example they are of working hard, and like they reverse dieted, and they're eating like
rock star.
They're eating fucking thousands and thousands more calories, and they're shredded and whatever. Or this person I've been working for with however period of time, and they've put on like some huge amount of muscle or whatever. It's important to realize that
that's one
person.
Yep.
How about those who didn't respond like that?
How is the rest of this person's clients doing?
Yep.
And moreover, those freaks that whatever that person is basically getting the benefit of posting about.
Yep.
For, I'm not going to say they aren't proud of their client, but potentially for their own gain, those kind of freakish people, they may have just ended up doing that
they
anyway.
Would have succeeded anywhere. Yeah.
So that's really important to keep in mind when you see those, and I know you see them, those kind of posts.
Well, that's one of my favorite quotes from Leo in Wolf of Wall Street. It said, "Don't judge me on my winners, judge me on my losers, because I have so few."
Yep.
Like, and it's like, that's kind of like, I would proudly say that with us. Like, we discuss our clients a lot in our house, and I know I do with other coaches. And so I'll use one guy, and he'll probably love to hear it if he makes it, is David Aguayo. David has worked with Alberto, and he's worked with Ben. David knows it, and David he has just bad luck when it comes to genetics. He just doesn't have the luck of the draw. But David's always been a hot topic between us and Berto, is because where he has come from, he is more than likely somebody who has it more tough than you think you have. You think you guys have it hard. David has it harder than. I've been in this industry probably 6-7 years now, and I think no one has it harder than David, and he gets it done.
Yep.
And he makes progress from where he's at. So I mean,
yep.
a bit of a joke with what I said with Leonardo DiCaprio, but it's true. Like I know all of us and all the people I mentioned earlier, everyone is a star. So in our house, whether it be Ellis McLean rolling up stolen 1,800 fucking pounds like a machine, or David Aguirre, it doesn't matter. Like,
but they're equally as impressive.
Exactly.
'Cause look at the relative change.
The relative change is what's important. So, and I think all these coaches I mentioned earlier, that's why that's the secret. It's that they just really care, and they have that respect for the natural progression of things, as we touched on earlier. So
we should have the PC powerlifting meet where everybody you have a biomechanist there who's measuring your joints and your joint angles.
Measuring torque.
I would lose that meet. Like, I would actually lose it.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, man, people are so sensitive about stuff. It's like, if you want to get super sensitive about that, if you want to be mathematically correct, who's producing the most torque at that joint? Like, there's going to be a whole different change up. The Wilks formula is not going to apply there.
Yeah, exactly.
So that would be a hilarious event. There was one more thing that I wanted to say, and I'm trying to remember what it was.
I wonder who would win that meet.
But I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to get
Jake
it.
would probably win that meet at this point.
I don't know about that.
Man, some super tall dudes would have some ridiculous numbers.
Probably Paul Revelia.
Yeah.
Call me back, Paul. I called you twice and I left you a voicemail.
Yeah, I don't remember what the last point was, but goddamn.
Dang on. We gotta end on a taper. Ha 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 ha. Alright. We're not saying anyone's better than another. We're not saying to only do this or to only eat certain condiments. But just find the right find the right person that fits for you personally as a person. Find someone who gives a shit consummately, I'm sorry. And the other things we talked about, respecting the natural progressions of things, albeit
I got it.
He got it.
I knew it was going to come back at a terrible time. So this is one last thing that I do want to bring up, because I think people get associated with being the X guy. So it's like the IIFYM guy, the DUP guy, the blank guy.
Very good point.
And this is yeah.
There you go.
It's really important to understand that as you're moving along, number one, that's a perception that is propagated by usually other people's understanding, which is outside of that person's inner group. So they talk about it, and they assume, for example, like maybe Mike is the DUP guy, maybe I'm somehow lumped into that too. And the reality is, because at a certain point when this really started to slowly catch on, we talked a lot about doing more lifting instead of cardio for an intervention for dieting, and then Chad Dolan studied that, which is something to also look into. I don't know if that's published yet. I think it was accepted. I should know that. Anyway, and then the whole concept of doing higher frequency things, and then with Dr. Zordos, like maxing every day, and then we both did that, and then really focusing on the compound lifts only. So the assumption out there could be, well, Ben thinks you should only do the compound lifts. Well, Mike thinks you should only do the compound lifts. Mike might be a little more of a purist than I am with that. But I think the important thing that's very humbling in this process is, as you annihilate yourself like I've done, you start to learn where certain things fit in more than others. Now, don't get me wrong. There's certain things that simply from a physics perspective do not make sense, which we might catch flack for this, but doing things like limited range of motion things like board presses or like rack pulls and stuff for like a raw lifter, that doesn't biomechanically make sense. And we can discuss that maybe on another one if we want to. But however, things like if you get caught in a motor pattern of a movement and maybe you have some kind of imbalance, or maybe training other things that work at a different angle. Even I have to admit, I've grown a greater appreciation for that. Or something that we've talked about in the house, and something that I really have noticed is, and what I've actually scaled back on doing is, before I'd bump people's frequency with deadlifting. Now I actually increase their back hypertrophy frequency, because you will get traded. So that might sound confusing, and I do want to briefly explain that. So yes, the concept of the SAID principle, specific adaptation to imposed demands, that still applies there, where deadlifting more will give you definitely a higher magnitude of response. However, deadlifting more frequently in the context of the other two lifts will crush you. That is a promise. It will destroy you. It's just like saying you will die at some point. It is a fact. I can promise you deadlifting excessively will destroy you. So realizing things like this, you can still get the indirect benefit. So maybe it might not be the same magnitude as doing deadlifting every day, but in the context of long-term progress, it's sustainable.
It's like risk reward.
Exactly. So bumping that up more, you will still improve your deadlift. And actually, people who aren't doing any back work and they're just doing low frequency deadlifting, you actually can suffer, because I think one of the popular things with our programming is you get so lost and excited about the powerlifting work that the bodybuilding, quote unquote bodybuilding work or hypertrophy work gets boring. That is all that's part of your total volume. That's part of the program. If you're skimping, you're going to get less than you should. So all of that stuff is extremely important. Again, it's just like saying, well, I want a perfect diet, but I'm not going to drink any water. Okay. See how that works out.
Good luck, guy. Good over there, Jack?
I think, the only small thing I guess I had to add to that was, I guess it was along the lines of, being like a purist and, just being a little bit more open-minded, especially in regards to powerlifting, because like specificity is really important, but there's always going to be that trade-off, I think, with lifting things heavily more frequently, and especially if your form and things like that is not,
or just your simple anatomy,
or your anatomy. If things aren't on point, and if you're doing something wrong over a really extended period of time, and you're only doing the big three, there's not really going to be anything corrective to fix that. Like with my squat, I mean, I'm squatting with like basically the bar like hanging out like over to the left, like, and it felt, I was doing it for so long, it felt normal to me, and so now you can't tell unless I had done something else to fix that.
Perfect example of maladaptation. Perfect example.
So I guess all that really comes down to is just being open-minded.
I think that was our longest podcast ever.
Yeah,
it was good though.
I apologize. No,
it was good. It was good. So thank you as always.
Thank you if you stuck with us on that.
Yeah, thank you. So next week you'll hear from us again. Also, I think if you guys want to kind of shout us some topics, and I'm saying this at the end because only those who made it to the end should be able to say it. We put these on YouTube as well, so if you're listening on iTunes, just go to YouTube and give us a comment and just kind of give us some topics on what you want to talk about, because we have a ton, but if you're listening this many episodes in deep, then we definitely will give you something back. So thank you all. We will speak to you next week.